Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Lone Screenplay Nominee Podcast, where we talk about films that were solely nominated for an Oscar. I'm your host, Matthew Anderson, and I'm a bit under the weather today. But you don't want to know about whether or not I'm feeling better or feeling healthy. You want to know what our movie is and what who our guest is. We have Eoin Daly on the show, which if I'm correct in saying, you've listened to the show various times before, correct?
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of Twitter friends, I guess, who've guested on your podcast. So it's how I discovered. I think I started listening around. I think you're only recently, really, around your May-December episode, just because I follow Ronaldo and all the things that he discusses on film Twitter. But yeah, no, I listened in a
Nice.
couple of times.
Well, I wanted to ask, before I even ask any more questions, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Where I currently am, it is nearing the end of the day. So I've just been busy all day. Just doing regular stuff. But yeah, no, excited to talk as well.
Yeah, sorry about that. You could thank my my changing of the weather kicking my ass today because we were supposed to start much earlier today, but I just didn't get enough sleep, and I've been running with like a runny nose and a sore throat for the last 24 hours, maybe 48 actually. It's getting better though. Yeah, I got my water here. I'll get some OJ after we're done. But I should be able to make it through recording this episode, so we'll be good. Yeah. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being on here, Owen. Before we dive into our episodes, I have typical questions I want to ask you. First off, what it is you do for a living, or is there anything you do outside of being a guest on my podcast? Anything that you like to do for fun, so to speak?
Well, for a living, I work in theater, so backstage theater. I'm not currently working on anything at the moment, but that's kind of the main work that I do is just usually in the areas of wardrobe. So that's kind of what I do outside of just being a major enthusiast of most creative arts, whether it be film or theater or television or whatever you can think of, really.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I excuse me. I also did theater for what was it, some of high school and college as well, and that was fun. It was definitely interesting for sure, especially as someone having to work on a couple of productions on stage and behind the scenes, so to speak, and they were interesting, so to speak. So I definitely understand where you're coming from with that. And I wanted to ask, since it's always tough to come up with a favorite film of yours, because there's about 1,000 you could pick from. Is there a favorite genre of film you like to watch?
Yeah, well, it kind of, I guess, changes all the time, but at the moment, it's not necessarily a genre, but I like to think of it as a genre, is just like, um, female ensemble led films. I've just kind of, with not working a lot recently, I've just been revisiting a lot of my favorites, from whether it be the 2010s or even as far back as the 1930s. I say a film like Stage Door is kind of a favorite of mine, where you just have a large ensemble of female characters just interacting with each other. So I guess that's kind of, to answer that question, how I feel at the moment is my favorite type of films to watch.
Cool. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions I have. I guess really one. Well, speaking of female-led films, we'll get to the one we're talking about pretty soon. But are there any more like recent female-led movies that you particularly like? Like Women Talking. I assume is a movie that you enjoyed.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna. It will sound like a humble brag in a way, but I was lucky enough to go to the Cannes Film Festival in May of this year, where I saw a bunch of films I really enjoy. But I think the one that's kind of stuck with me is The Substance, which is
Yep.
due for release later this week, actually.
It'll be out. I think it'll be out the same day we'll be dropping the episode. So yeah,
Yeah, but no,
I know. Yeah.
yeah, that's one I'm very excited for more people to see, and I've not been able to stop thinking about it the last couple of months for sure.
Yeah, and it also recently won the TIFF Audience Midnight Madness Award as well. So congrats to The Substance as well. Yeah, I don't know when I'm going to get around to watching The Substance because I got a really busy workload and I'm trying to save up some cash already to go to the American Film Institute Film Festival with my cousin next month. And so I just got to be very picky with what I watch in theaters, or what are some films that I think are like top priorities, and what are films that I'm like, I'll watch it, but I'll watch it when it comes out for like home video for a cheaper price. But we'll see what happens. But if I do see The Substance, I'll let you know what my thoughts are on it. But it's just a matter of when I'll be seeing it. So yeah.
Fair
So
enough.
yeah, I think that's enough rambling on in terms of the basic gist we got for the podcast. So I guess let's just jump right into our episode if you don't mind. So today we're here to discuss Adam's Rib from 1949. This won't be a beat by beat bulletin presentation like you hear on other channels, but we will be discussing major spoilers for our talk. If you haven't seen the film yet and want to hear our full thoughts on it, watch the film first and then come back to hear us talk about it on here. Last time I checked, it was on Tubi, although that might be gone by the time this episode is up. So, however you're able to see it, yeah. So that's all I'll say about that. So, yeah. So, brief production history. I'll try to scramble this down as much as I can. The screenplay was written specifically as a Tracy Hepburn vehicle. Their sixth film together by Garson Kanin and actress Ruth Gordon, married scriptwriters who were friends of the couple. And Kanin claimed that Judy Holland initially declined her role due to her character, because her character is called Fatso in the script. And according to Garson, the story of Adam's Rib was based off the lives of Gordon friends Dorothy and William Dwight Whitney and of actor Raymond Massey. The Whitneys were married lawyers who represented opposing sides in Macy's high-profile divorce from actress Ariane Ellen before pursuing their own divorce in order to marry their clients from the Macy case. Kanan and Gordon saw great potential in the idea of married lawyers as adversaries, and the plot for Adam's Rib was developed. Other titles for the film were Love is Legal and Man and Wife. The MGM front office quickly vetoed the latter as dangerously indiscreet. Kanan also recalled that Cole Porter refused to write a song for Madeline, as Hepburn's character was originally named, but proceeded when the character's name was changed to Amanda. This change allowed Porter to quickly revise a tune he had written during his 1940 adventure in South Pacific and later discarded as mediocre So Long Samoa. And although this set in New York, the Adam's Rib production was filmed mainly on MGM Studios in Culver City, California. How ironic. And they did do some shooting in various parts of New York City, including at the Women's House of Detention, where Doris Addinger is imprisoned after shooting her husband, and Gordon and Kanan's farm in Connecticut. Hepburn and Kanan encouraged Judy Holland to play the role of Doris, and Columbia Pictures president Harry Cohn, I think I might have butchered his name, sorry, considered her performance a screen test for the lead role in the play and film adaptation of Kanan's play Born Yesterday, in which Holiday had starred during its Broadway run. Receiving positive notices for Adam's Rib, Holiday was cast in the Born Yesterday film, for which she won the Academy Award for. So this had been considered a box office hit at the time, and it got a lot of critical acclaim. In fact, one of the film critics, Leonard Maltin, gave it 4 out of 4 stars, describing it as one of Hollywood's greatest comedies about the battle of the sexes, with peerless Tracy and Hepburn, supported by movie newcomers Holiday, Llewellyn, Hagen, and Wayne. So Judy Holliday, Tom Ewell, David Wayne, and Gene Hagen are the people that Leonard Maltin's referring to. Obviously, you got the Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay at the Academy Awards, and was also recognized by the American Film Institute in a couple of the lists, one of which was the AFI's Top 100 Years and 100 Laughs at number 22 back in 2000. And in 2008, it was on AFI's top 10. It was on AFI's top 10 romantic comedy film at number 7. And AFI had also honored the film stars, naming Katharine Hepburn the greatest American screen legend among females, and Spencer Tracy #9 among males. This was also adapted into a TV show, short-lived TV show, with Ken Howard and Blythe Danner as the leads. However, the series was canceled after 13 episodes. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the production notes. And as far as what the premise is of it, domestic and professional tensions mount when a husband and wife work as opposing lawyers in a case involving a woman who shot her husband. And so that's the premise of the movie. So I wanted to ask Owen, out of all the movies that I gave you the list through, that I tossed you the list for, what was it that made this one be like, ooh, this is one of the ones I'm curious in picking? Because you had a couple of other options as well, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I mean, as we'll talk about it, it's a great comedy, which is something that, which is a genre of films that the Academy just never tends to kind of embrace as much as, say, your major dramas that they always want to push behind. So that was kind of a reason, and I think because I had just recently rewatched it earlier this year, um, I I knew I loved it anyway, but I was like, this would be a lovely opportunity to discuss one of my favorite films, and one that I feel is appreciated, but slightly, I don't know, I guess slightly underappreciated in certain aspects. But yeah, and also the excuse to talk about Katharine Hepburn is something that I'll always make the effort in doing.
Yeah, Katharine Hepburn is a really terrific actress. She's been in a lot of, she's been in a fair amount of incredible films. I think she's still the highest award-winning actress in the lead actress category, which is still nuts that even someone like Frances McDormand hasn't gotten there yet, but we'll see what happens. And Spencer Tracy is also an incredible actor in his own right. He has done Judgment Nuremberg. What was the other one I'm thinking of that they were in together? It was the Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was another one he got nominated for. So yeah, it's an interesting set of actors to pair up for the film, and so you had already seen this before, and you thought that I assume you enjoyed it overall, even on your rewatch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the pairing. Because I've seen all of the Hepburn and Tracy pairings, the ones that they did before, and then the ones they did afterwards. And while some of the pairings that they've done together haven't been my favorite films, this has always been the one that stands out. I think mainly because of how equal they are to each other, in terms of like, because admittedly I'm not the biggest Spencer Tracy fan, while also recognizing that he is considered such a major acting talent. I think it's only because some of the films that he has received, I guess, major acclaim throughout his career, I've not necessarily been the most pushed to what he displays in those films. But watching something like this over and over again kind of makes me almost go back on my statement, because I just enjoy him in this film, and I think just something about Hepburn brings out a different side of him that maybe I, in my earlier viewings of other films, didn't necessarily appreciate about him as much as, say, Hollywood would have at the time.
Yeah, and I'm looking through right now. Spencer Tracy is one of two actors to win the lead actor category twice, back to back at least. And I think that's very interesting that him and Tom Hanks are the only two people to do it. And yeah, I don't think I've seen much of his films though, to be honest. I've seen Adam's Rib. This is the second one. I think the other film I'd seen him in was Judgment at Nuremberg, which he's really good in too. I'll have to give more of a watch for his films, but watch his other films. You know what I mean? I'm really tired. But yeah, no. As far as this movie goes, it was a good pick. You chose Owen because I thought this was a really solid courtroom drama. It's funny that you saw it. It is, I guess, kind of touted more as a romantic comedy drama, but I saw more as like a drama with some comedic bits here and there, but nothing too like hilarious. But then again, it was like the type of humor you do in the '40s is much different to what we do now, uh, and yeah, it was a pretty good courtroom drama, and I think what works about the film the most for me was Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, which it really is their movie, and it's the reason why the film was even made to begin with. I mean, as I said before, Ruth and Garson, who are married writers, uh, they decide, they wanted to make this another Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn vehicle, and we know without even looking into much detail on the first five movies, they must have been considered that much of a hit to be like, all right, let's keep this going. It's like let's have another Paul Newman, Robert Redford collaboration, or whatever another pairing of actors you want. And that works sometimes, where it's like, let's do this, but yeah, no, yeah, and it works because of them in their respective roles, and I really have to credit Spencer Tracy for not being too over the top with the role. Like, obviously he has to yell a lot and he has to scream a lot especially in the courtroom scenes, but he's not over exaggerating his emotions or being too cartoonish with his facial expression, which is something that a lot of other actors would do, especially around this time. But yeah, and I thought he was really good, and Katharine Hepburn's really solid in the film too. Like, she's got a couple of great moments in the film that we'll probably get into in a moment. But yeah, out of if there was one thing I would have to credit the film for that I didn't really, it was something that I was like, it's been a while since I've seen a movie like this. And funny enough, I think it was made a couple of years before the film I'm about to mention, which was oh God, what was that? It was a film from the 1950s, and it starred Kirk Douglas. I'm looking up right now because it's on the tip of my tongue. I know it is.
Detective Story?
No, Ace in the Hole. That's what it was.
Oh.
It reminded me of that, like, Ace in the Hole, where it's like, in terms of like not necessarily like, oh, these are how films used to get made. It's more about like the framing and some of the cinematography composition, because I thought some of the blocking was pretty good, and how the camera was set up at certain points, especially in the beginning where they're doing this elaborate not elaborate, but more like a long, heavy dialogue sequence between Hepburn and Tracy on the bed, and they're discussing about how, about the newspaper and, the case that's being brought up. And it's a really long take, too, and I was like, wow, that's actually a pretty impressive two-shotter right there. And then we get to the other one, which is in the, oh, God, who is it? It was when Amanda ends up interrogating the client, the person who's being put on trial, the defendant, and I thought that was also a pretty good, however long of a oneer it was, and yeah, it was just just again a couple of actors coming together, spouting off this really solid dialogue and having a ball with it. And you could tell, it's even with their scenes together of Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, you could tell that they were having a fun time playing their roles respectively as well. And even later as the film progresses with their, decline of marriage, and the one thing I did like in terms of how that ties into the whole decline of their marriage is they had the song from their next door neighbor, Farewell Amanda. And every time that's being played, ever since its initial start, it slowly, tears them apart. It's almost like a, what do you call it? Like a metaphor or an allegory, so to speak, or whatever phrase. I can't remember the phrase on the top of my head. But essentially, it's there to show how their relationship has decreased ever since the start of the movie. Because we see them as a loving couple. They don't say very much words. They just, she just says, like when he's, still in bed, she goes, it's 7:30, doesn't have to say anything more than that. It's 7:30. And I like that. It was just very simple and direct, and I like their dynamic between the two. And it changes over the course of the film, up until the very end of the film, and then it kind of goes back to their happy, loving couple that they used to be. Um, do you agree with me on any of this, or am I?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I enjoy how you pointed out how a lot of the scenes is basically like a set shot, and you just let the actors play in the amazing dialogue that I'm sure we will continue to discuss. I mean, that's the reason that we're discussing this film. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed that scene, that interrogation scene with Judy Holliday in the women's prison, because I in like preparation for discussing the podcast, I was recently watching a video, Fritz in the Oscars video on Judy Garland, or no, sorry, Judy Holliday, how she got the part in Born Yesterday, and there were some clips of it of Katharine Hepburn talking about that scene in particular, and her scenes whenever she would play opposite Judy Holliday, and how she would turn her back to the camera and just let Judy be the star. I mean, you said it in the beginning of the podcast, is that this was kind of seen as the audition for the Billy part in Born Yesterday. Yeah, I know I do enjoy a lot of the compositions that George Cukor, the director, places in this film, because like there are a lot of lengthy dialogue scenes even before they get into the courtroom scenes, but I find myself never growing tired of just this really talented ensemble, whether it's the main two stars or all the great supporting players, just delivering the dialogue so expertly. So and yeah, no, it just works, and it makes, when people, I feel like, talk about films feeling too theatrical because there's not a lot of majestic major like landscape shots. I think a lot of people should go back and watch films from this time, which relied, some of the best films of this era relied on great dialogue, which is something that maybe gets lost with every passing decade of film. But when you rewatch a film like this, you kind of understand impressive how impressive a film can be just for having great dialogue and great sort of written situations that this film has plenty of.
Yeah, it does. And what I also like about it too is, again, it's just like it's taking a concept like this that is a bit ahead of its time in that it's talking about the equality of men and women. And especially with a case like this, they don't hammer it in on the head. Like it's there to, it's not just there to be like, oh, we're gonna tell you about it. We're actually gonna show that sort of disagreement of that inequality that we have within our society, especially through the characters played by Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. And it's because of their characters that we're able to connect more into the themes and ideas that George Cukor and the writers, they want to establish within its themes and tone really well. And it's because we care about these characters so much that we're more sucked into the case, especially when we get to that point where the Spencer Tracy character comes home, Adam. He comes home and sees the next door neighbor, getting it on with his wife, so to speak, or at least giving her a couple of smooches, and he comes home with what looks like a gun, but it is actually a licorice gun. And so a scene like that we wouldn't really care about if we didn't know these characters or we didn't care about these characters, and that's something that really is something that a lot of new writers should learn, is that if you are going to force or bring a lot of these issues up in terms of like inequality for men and women, do it in a way that makes us care about the story, about the characters first, and then and then tie that into the characters themselves, especially how they react to the reaction that that the Doris character is given a non-guilty verdict, so to speak, and it's because of that they react very differently, because here Katharine Hepburn feels like maybe she's won something out of this, but in reality, it kind of, what was the cost, and the cost was that she strained her relationship from her husband, and yeah, that's also something I kind of question myself, is like, is it actually like morally right or legally right to have a married couple fight on the same case but on opposing sides. Like, isn't there like a ruling that says no, you cannot do this whatsoever because there's a chance that you may talk about the case out of court, and such. But that's something I'm like, yeah, whatever, who cares? It's still an entertaining story, and I still like these characters. But it was something I did kind of question to myself when I was watching. I'm like, like I'll have to look more into that.
Yeah, when it comes to like little details like that about careers in films, I kind of like you kind of have to let some of it go because there is always going to be some dramatic licenses that have to be taken. I mean, there are many, 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 many courtroom dramas that maybe play with what you would expect in realistic situations, but you kind of just have to go into whenever you watch a piece of art just knowing that it's not a real representation of, I'm sure, what those careers are like. But either way, even knowing that dramatic licenses were probably taken with whether these two lawyers could go up against each other, you kind of don't care because you're just having such a good time. I like to think of like this film. Like to think of again another film that I rewatched recently is My Cousin Vinny, a sort of equally as impressive comedic courtroom drama that has dramatic moments to it because there are obviously drama related to these cases because you're dealing with people's livelihoods, like the rest of their lives, the defendants and victims. But yeah, I just think those two films kind of are really enjoyable courtroom. I'm going to say dramedies because courtroom comedy just sounds like not the right description for this type of film. But I think that film and then this film kind of show how you can make such a serious situation like being in court just so enjoyable.
Speaking of tech aspects that we brought up earlier in the film, I'm not sure if you were aware, Owen, that Jeff Dawn, Jack Dawn is the makeup artist. Ignore the motorcycle outside. Pay no attention to the curtain. Anyway, so Jack Dawn is the makeup artist on the film. He is the grandfather of Jeff Dawn. And if people who aren't familiar with their Oscar history or know anything about the makeup category, Jeff Dawn is as I mentioned, he's the grandson of Jack Dawn, and Jeff went on to win an Oscar for Terminator 2 with Stan Winston. So I find it, because I was looking up when the credits started rolling for the opening and it said Jack Dawn, I'm like, wait a minute, I know that name from somewhere. I'm like, Jack Dawn. I started looking it up, and I look up and I'm like, oh, he's the grandfather of Jeff Dawn. Okay, that's nice. So yeah, just a fun little one of the many pieces of trivia that you will probably find on IMDb. But I digress. Yeah, but no, you're right though. Yeah, like so long as you care about the characters and the you care enough about the characters and they're giving good enough performances in there, you can kind of let some of this courtroom talk slide a little bit. To be like, all right, I'm still entertained by the movie. It's not a terribly made movie, which this wasn't at all. It was a very well crafted film, and I'm really glad that they did what they did in terms of getting the film made. And yeah, it's just a really solid film. A couple other things I could mention that I'll try to mention real quick before so my voice gives out. But I did like how the opening of the film started off with very little dialogue as Doris was following her husband throughout the city. I thought that was really nice to establish mood and tension, especially when she brings out the gun out of her purse and reads the instruction manual. I thought that was pretty cool to be like establishing who her character was, as someone who's never handled a gun before. This is like a first time, situation would explain, and it explains why she's in such a panic too. So that was pretty cool. And there's a stunt in the film, as in the beginning of the film, where Adam and Amanda drive over to the and drops Adam off at the job. There's a little stunt that you see in the film where she ends up pulling over, and there's a car right behind her that's almost about to hit her. And I was honestly shocked that it didn't hit her, and I was like, oh, I kind of wonder if that was planned or if it was sort of improv, so to speak. You never know with some of these movies. However, I did notice that when Spencer Tracy was lifted up by the circus person who's able to lift weights, that you could obviously see the strings attached to him too, like with some of the wire work. I'm like, all right, it wasn't a problem, but I was like, that's kind of cute that they were still able to do it. They weren't even hiding it. But yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else I wanted to say. Um, yeah, any other notes you had for the movie?
Well, I think there's such a great amount of little one scene characters who sort of appear throughout. I mean, you mentioned the circus performer, played by Hope Emerson, who in this same year is a completely different type of actress in Caged, which is a great prison drama that was, I'm sure we'll talk about later, was nominated against this film in original screenplay. She's just really fun in this film. I also watching this film reminded me of how I just miss times where there were these character actors who you necessarily didn't know by name, but you knew them by the type of role they would play, and they would continuously play it so wonderfully in all the films they made. I mean, I know she's not in this film, but an example of that type of performer is a Thelma Ritter, who just had a one way of performing, but when used well, was really excellent. I also really liked the title cards that they used to sort of almost showcase the passage of time, whether it was in the day where you would have this couple in court, or in the evening where you get, as you've mentioned, you get to see the deterioration of their marriage at home, as you see what they do to each other in court affect them. I mean, more so affect Adam, because Amanda just sort of stays on the right the whole time, which I think is done really well, because it doesn't feel as if she's not suffering. It feels that because she's such a commanding person, that she can separate her career from her marriage, which obviously I feel like the Adam character can't necessarily do as well. Um, yeah, I just enjoy so many different parts. I agree with you. I enjoy the opening that you get to know the Doris character first before you're introduced to the main stars of the film, which is not necessarily something that you expect of a lot of films of this time, especially with how reliant they were on movie stars and getting you to be introduced to them straight away. Um, and yeah, I enjoy to also speak about George Cukor. I mean, he's one of my favorite directors who's directed so many different types of films throughout his career. I enjoy, again, a small little shot that he does is when you see Doris enter the courtroom for the first time, and she's wearing the gift that Adam got for Amanda. I think it was the night before. Maybe who knows? When it comes to passages of times, you kind of have to let things go, because I'm sure not everything was happening within a couple of days, as it almost seems like it is in the film. But you get the introduction of Doris wearing the hat, and it just is another part of throwing Adam off from his game, because Amanda, the Katharine Hepburn character, is sort of using these tactics of what she knows will set off her husband to just throw him off so she can win this case. But I don't necessarily feel any malice towards Amanda for doing this. It just feels like she's much more cunning than he is. So I enjoyed that little piece of direction, and how I would imagine was scripted in, but how the script and the direction really kind of come together for that little sequence in the film.
Yeah, George Cukor is a director that I want to keep an eye out on for more movies. I'm looking here. My Fair Lady, I think, was one of his more famous ones that I've seen. He also did a adaptation of A Star Is Born as well. I also find it funny that so far, as of this recording, everyone who's directed a Star Is Born, a version of it, except for one, has gone on to win an Oscar. And the only one who hasn't won yet is Bradley Cooper. So we'll see what happens with that, as I keep saying over and over on the show. In case you haven't in case you haven't noticed, I am a big fan of him, but yeah, I digress. And yeah, George Cukor is he's an interesting director, and I would like to see more of his work for sure. And I'm reading here, apparently he was nominated for Best Director 5 times at the Academy Award, and he only won for My Fair Lady, which was like a big musical production. And I think that was also one of the few times where we had more than 2 films getting double-digit nominations that year, which is very interesting. No, yeah, no, it was 3. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about the film. About Adam's Rib. Like I said, I'm glad you really you picked a really good one, Owen. I must say, and it was one that I was a little bit worried that I wouldn't get into because I remember there was one that another guest chose. Well, there's been a few older films that some guests have chosen. And I've been kind of like, it was okay or whatever. But this was good. So yeah, this was a nice choice. Any final thoughts you have in regarding to the movie or anything else you want to say? Because I pretty much went through all my notes as you were discussing. I was like, was there anything else? And I'm like, no, I pretty much said all I needed to say for this.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you ended up really enjoying it, and I think we haven't necessarily discussed it a lot, but I think the kind of focus on feminism and the gender politics, with how I guess binary they are, sort of makes the film feel timeless in a way. Like obviously it is dated in terms of certain things. I'm sure the Hays Code probably didn't allow them to go as far as maybe the script could have gone in discussing like that little scene very early on when you have the Amanda character talking with her assistant, and how even the assistant is like, that's just how the world works in terms of her opinions towards a man cheating on his wife or a wife cheating on her husband. I think just with how it discusses the relationship I guess the world has to gender or to the sexes, makes the film feel more timeless, which is something that's in the script. So that's definitely something that I feel like makes the film more appreciated as opposed to other films at the time, which maybe just would have worked better at the time because you have the audiences. God, I keep saying of the time. Audiences back then who were looking for certain things in films, whereas nowadays we obviously grow and learn and are looking for to be educated and looking for different things. So I feel like this film is a necessary step in terms of conversation, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. Don't really have anything else to differentiate from that. But yeah, you said it pretty well. As far as I guess we can just go right into our next section of the podcast. Obviously, the question I have to get out of the way: did you think this was worthy of its lone nomination? Script it got, and would you have nominated for other categories?
I definitely think, in terms of its script, it was very worthy in getting nominated, as we've already discussed with the sort of great tension that it sets up between the married couple and these lengthy scenes of dialogue that don't necessarily feel so lengthy. But yeah, no, I definitely think its screenplay nomination was deserved, and I'm always so happy to see the names Ruth Gordon and oh god, what's his her husband? What's his name again? Garson Kanin. Sorry.
Yep. I was about to say.
Seeing.
I had a tissue in my hand.
No, that's okay. But I always love seeing the two of them. I mean, because they did have multiple I think 3 together nominations for original screenplay. With A Double Life before this, and Pat and Mike, another great Hepburn and Tracy duo film that they were nominated together on by. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a very deserving script nomination. It's funny that when you look at the film, it's always listed as 1949, even though technically it was released the following year, which is the year that it was nominated for its lone Oscar nomination. In terms of other categories I would have nominated it for certain, Judy Holliday would have been a wonderful supporting actress nominee for me. Like, I know that year she she won her Oscar, so she's not like lacking in terms of a nomination
Yeah.
in her career. But I think she would have been a wonderful supporting actress nominee because it's the perfect type of supporting performance where you are introduced to her in a certain way, you get to know her a bit more through her describing her life, and then later on you get to see her on the stand reacting to everything, and she just does it so naturally, and it's just such a perfect type of supporting actress performance that I almost wish it'd been her nomination, or even, I mean, in my opinion, her win that year. I think she's really deserving in this film. Other categories would I really like the score in the film. I think it's very fun. It really the underscore of the more physical scenes work really well for me. And then I would have nominated this for Best Picture in 1950. It's my fifth favorite film of that year of all the films that I've seen. Um, Katharine Hepburn would have. I wouldn't personally nominate her, but she would have made a really great Best Actress nomination. It just happens to be that 1950 is an extremely competitive and great year for leading actress performances. But yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely yeah.
And I was gonna say 4 of the lead actress nominees were from Best Picture nominees, and 2 of which were from the same movie. So yeah, it's kind of tough for Katharine Hepburn to get in. It's interesting that Spencer Tracy got in for Father of the Bride, but not for Adam's Rib. But again, Father of the Bride was a Best Picture nominee, so that kind of explained why. So yeah, but yeah, no, I agree with you though. It's a really worthy nomination for original screenplay at the Oscars. Judy Holliday, yeah, that's interesting. She won that same year. Okay, wow. Um, and yeah, the score was good. I don't know if I would have given it the nomination though, because I gotta see some of the other nominees. I didn't get a chance to watch the winner, unfortunately, for this category, but I do own Sunset Boulevard, so I'll get around to that pretty soon, hopefully. But I am curious to see how that'll turn out for me. And yeah, just a pretty solid film. Don't really have much to say in terms of the Oscars for this year, except it's interesting that it was because of this year. Billy Wilder won for. I'm looking through.
All About Eve.
No, that was Joseph Mankiewicz.
Oh, sorry. Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, Sunset Boulevard. He won the Oscar for original screenplay, and I think it was because of that he was able to do Ace in the Hole. So, and I did a whole episode on that too, which was a pretty interesting watch. And yeah, again, I don't really have too much to say, other than I enjoyed the film. I'm glad I got the Oscar nominations it got. I definitely want to see Ruth Gordon's Oscar win for Rosemary's Baby soon. Not only because we're getting a prequel to that pretty soon on Paramount Plus, or whatever the channel is called now, but I've never seen it before. I've always been trying to get around to watching it, and just never either gotten in the mood and watching it, or I just never had the time to sit down and enjoy it for what it is. But I look forward to seeing it for sure. Have you seen Rosemary's Baby yet, or no?
Yeah, I've seen it multiple times, and I think you're. I don't know how familiar you are with Ruth Gordon as a performer, but just she's such a particular type of performer. I mean, it kind of comes through in her writing. Like, her comedic sensibilities are so on point, and she manages a lot of great comedic moments in the great horror film that is Rosemary's Baby. And yeah, she's wonderful in that, and still to this day gives one of the best Oscar acceptance speeches. If you've ever seen her accepting the award, it's a great piece of television in itself. But yeah, in terms of, I guess, the original screenplay category from this year, I look forward to when you do watch Sunset Boulevard, because that is a amazing screenplay. It has. I rewatched it this morning as well before watching Adam's Rib, even though I'd only just again recently rewatched Sunset Boulevard. Its screenplay is just so standout, with lines of dialogue, whether through its great narration or just spoken in the film, stand out so much. I mean, it's some of the Norma Desmond lines just like stick with me. Like I'm thinking, it's the pictures that I am big. It's the pictures that got small. Um, yeah, I that's a great film, and I understand why it won with the competition that it had that year, for sure.
Also, it's the only Best Picture nominee up against 3 lone screenplay nominees, and it's the same thing that happened with Call Me by Your Name. Without even having seen Sunset Boulevard, it's like I get it. You know,
Hmm.
Call Me by Your Name and Sunset Boulevard were 2 Best Picture nominees in a field of 3 lone screenplay nominees, and a film that had a couple of categories, but nothing too major outside of some acting nods.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
but I also think,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think because I've seen all of the films that were nominated that year, and I think The Men is not necessarily it's not a favorite film of mine, but for those who consider themselves Marlon Brando fans, it's definitely something you should watch because it was his film debut. The year before he did Streetcar, he did do The Men, and then No Way Out is sort of an almost a very of the moment film that um feels of the moment in any era because of the I guess racial politics that it discusses in the film. And then Caged is sort of a personal favorite of mine. It's very dramatic but very fun. It's one of those female led films that I constantly, whether I'm watching it or just thinking about it, just always wanting to recommend it to people because I think in that year of 1950, it's definitely one of the least discussed films. I mean, when you look at, especially that, as we already mentioned, the Best Actress category, 1950, Eleanor Parker, who's the lead of Cage, is certainly one of the more stronger nominees of that field and just never gets discussed as much as her co-nominees. But that's another film that people, I think, should watch very much so.
Hmm. Yeah, and Eleanor Parker only got 3 nominations overall: Caged, Detective Story, and Interrupted Melody, all for lead actress. And
Hmm.
she won she won the Volpe Cup for Caged.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I apologize, guys, for this being a much shorter episode, but that's partly because my sinuses and my sore throat's kind of kicking my ass. So yeah, so that's why I don't really have too much else to say other than that. So yeah, uh, yeah. So like I said, Owen, I thank you for being on the show. It's always nice to have someone who's enjoyed the show. You know, someone who's on the sidelines watching or listening to the show and being like, "Hey, I want to be in on this." So it's so thanks again for reaching out to me, and once again, thank you for dedicating your time to be here on the show. Before we sign off, is there anything you'd like to plug in on, or where listeners could follow you along after the episode is finished?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure to watch one of my favorite films and introduce it to a new person. I can mainly be found on Twitter, just at my name, Eoin Daly, posting about film and television daily. That wasn't meant to be. I didn't mean to say the same word in a row, but it just came out that way. But yeah, no, and you can also find me like every film fan on Letterboxd, logging the films that I watch every day and trying to make sense of the new films that come out every year. But yeah, that's the main place you can find me. I don't really have anything else to plug other than that I really enjoy film and I'm always looking to discuss films with new people.
All right. As for me, you can follow me and the show through Linktree under @Matthew995, where you can follow all my social media accounts such as Twitter and Letterboxd. On the same site, I've also provided a link to where you could listen to more of the episodes of the show. If you're interested in being in the hot seat, let me know, and hopefully we can arrange that happening soon. We got a couple things coming up in the next couple weeks, or a couple months, I should say. And then when we start off next year, I got a couple of things planned, but I'll share that news for December. So just letting everyone know about that right now. So we're getting the ball rolling on whatever it is that I will share with you in a couple months. So yeah, so that's that. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.